Hi, I'm Quinn from Saint Social, and here's a look behind the scenes of our debut self-titled album. So Brian and Justin and I have been friends for a really long time. We grew up in the same part of the country along the Gulf Coast in the USA. Then we all kind of dispersed and we moved away. Eventually, we all ended up back in the Gulf Coast. Conversations led to us starting this band. We talked a lot about our favorite bands and the kind of music that we would want to make that really embodied how it feels to live where we live. It's obviously super beachy, so we wanted to make something that felt kind of surfy. We wanted to make something that felt really like driving. We wanted to make something that felt really dancey. And we also wanted to make something that felt very like ecstatic. In the South, like spirituality is like a huge part of where we live. It's very natural. It's a very warm feeling that connects people. We wanted whatever we made to have that vibe too. Most of the Gulf Coast is made up of tourist industry towns. We wanted to see if we could make something where cover bands dominate the scene that bars and clubs would embrace. We started to do some rough drafting. Everything started in this room where I'm at right now. I had ideas that I then sent to Brian and Justin in Dallas at the time. And what that looked like is I was in Logic and I threw a little bit of a beat down, threw a little bit of guitar down, and then I would forward that to the guys in a text thread and just say, hey, what do you think? And so the object was just to like create something that would spark the imagination and then get some feedback back. I sent those ideas, and around that same time that I'm starting to like get the guys to chime in on some of this new stuff, the bones of songs. COVID happens and quarantine happens, and so we're all in lockdown. Our songwriting process becomes part of the way that we got through the quarantine and the way that we encouraged each other and stayed connected. Because everything was online, we all had to like kind of create our own little studio spaces to sort of facilitate the creation of these songs until we could get in the room with each other and try to like jam out on them. So that's really how things started. So when the guys would give me like a thumbs up about the music, then I would try to flesh it out more, get it like sort of structured out, and then I would give the guys files so that they could then record their parts on top. And then they would send that back to me and I would sort of catalog it. So it was like a really unique situation. It was like a really unique way to start a band, and all without like knowing if the songs would even work live. We were just kind of like, hoping that if that time ever happened, that we get to try it out and see. We took 3 years to record it, and the recording was like a combination of working with our friend Hunter and our friend John, and we had another friend Joe from Voyager Mastering who mastered the record. So I'd say like lyrically, the songs started as, for me, as like a way to like encourage like us, like ourselves within the band, but also like our friends and our families and our community. So we really wanted to make something that could like speak to like all the myriad of emotions that everybody was experiencing in the middle of this quarantine, and also like beyond the quarantine, because a lot happened outside of that, and it really kind of made us very like reflective, like very like, what really matters in life. I know for me, a lot of the lyrics happened, and then I went through like a really dark period of time where I lost a good friend in a car accident, and my grandpa died, and then I went through like a weird breakup with a church I was part of, and I had a job change, and I was struggling with this very dark depression and just reevaluating all these pieces and parts of my life. The songs were there for me all of a sudden. It's like I'd written these things, and it was almost like they were like telling my story, or they were tools for me to help process through what I was personally trying to figure out. I'm grateful for the songs in that way. I'm hopeful that these songs are kind of like a mirror for people, or that people will find whatever they need to find in them to help bring some healing or some joy, stuff like that. I love a lot of great poets. I was reading Tony Hoagland, Franny Choi, Kate Baer, Keith Leonard. I was reading a lot of Rumi. I was reading the Psalms. And I collect comics. I also teach language arts. Spent a lot of time talking about this guy named Joseph Campbell. And he created this thing called the hero's journey, which is like a pattern you can see in all literature of how people travel to dark places as they venture out and they learn these things about themselves, and then they come home, but they come home different. There is a narrative arc in this record. It does feel like a concept record, so there's characters and they're having conversations. I'd also add that I played a lot with parallelism, songs that parallel each other. I'll say that, and then hopefully you'll go back and listen to it, check it out. There's this really beautiful Jewish poetic device called a chiasm, and the chiasm is like a treasure in the middle of the poem. And so the way this record is built, it's like there's a treasure in the middle of it because of the way it's laid out. And so I'm curious to know if anybody figures that out. I'll leave that there for you. Also, I'm like super interested in Star Wars, so there's like ring theory sort of in this record, which I know is probably trippy, but it's in there. As I was writing or working on the lyrics for the album, all of that stuff just kind of went into the pot. I'd say that this record is super cinematic. We made something that feels epic and that feels like home.